like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I am recording this podcast on, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And I'd like to welcome you to another Healthy Bite. My name is Dr. Ron Ehrlich. Now, this week we had the opportunity of speaking to Matt DeFina, the head of programs at the Man Cave. Now, it was a really interesting conversation. I so enjoyed talking to Matt. It was interesting. I think the journey that I went on personally is perhaps a little bit of a reflection on the journey that needs to be had. When I was thinking of the Man Cave, I was thinking of where I sometimes retreat when those around me, and particularly those close to me, as in my wife or family, may say to me, "What's wrong?" And I will go, "No, it's fine. I'm fine. No, I'm good. No, I'm fine. There's nothing wrong." And I'm often then crawling into the Man Cave, all on my own, just to ruminate, just to think about. And actually, what I've come to realise is that sometimes, because I haven't really been brought up to be in touch with my feelings and express them as well as I might, which makes this podcast so much more cathartic, but I digress for a moment. But when I'm in my man cave, I'm actually trying to articulate what it is the problem is, and after a couple of hours, it could even be a day or two, I have to admit, I will then be able to articulate what was going on in the Man Cave. Well, the Man Cave that Matt DeFina and his crew have created is a cave where you are not on your own, where you are actually encouraged to get in touch with your feelings in a safe space. And it was such an interesting discussion, and the group is such an interesting group, the Man Cave. It's I loved one of the quotes from a brochure that they have that describes the issues. And if this sounds familiar to some women listening to this, it's sobering to think that it's come from the mouth of a young boy. So often boys don't want advice, they just want to be heard. Another day in the cave. Right, so this is one of the things that we as men are always so quick to do, and that is to get straight to the solutions. Let's not bother with discussion. What's all this discussion about? Let's just get on with the solution. Well, here's a young boy saying, "Can you stop telling me about advice and just listen to what I'm saying?" And I think I've heard my wife and many of my women friends say exactly the same to me. Interestingly, some of the statistics that have emerged from these wonderful programs that are targeting 12-year-olds, high school students from 12 years old, 98% of young men would recommend the programs to others. 88% of men agreed that the facilitators role modelled what being a healthy man could look like. They also agreed and understand how the stereotype of being a man can negatively impact their mental health. 86% of school students that did the program said this, and 84% of students want to redefine the stereotype and create their own healthy version of being a man after going through the program. I mean, we're talking about social change and gender equality. Well, the change has to occur from a very early point, and of course that reference that the Jesuits said, "Mate, show me the boy at 7 and I'll show you the man." There was some learnings that came from it, and I thought this was interesting. They want to be good men, but are confused about how to go about it. Young men feel judged and misunderstood by their parents and the world. Young men want to talk about consent, sex and relationships, but feel disempowered. On the episode, I talked to Matt about the impact also of the whole issue around consent, and actually the rather disturbing influence that pornography has on young people, on any person's understanding of intimacy. But certainly when these are in developing personalities, this can be particularly disturbing. And the other thing that was interesting feedback from the students was that our teachers are trying but are still struggling to break through. Well, it's interesting because I also had a wonderful discussion with a professor of education at University of New South Wales called We Trust in Teachers, and we talked about the challenge for teachers, and so much is being asked of our teachers in our modern society that this is an additional thing. So what next? Well, here were some interesting things, and we come back to one that we've explored on several levels when we talked about digital nutrition, when we talked about fussy eating, when we talked about the use of technology. Here was the first one: role model what you expect. The second one: move beyond an expectation to an agreement. Treat these young people as adults and not just tell them what you expect, but form an agreement which you can come back to. Create a space for open discussion without judgment. Be curious about resistance. Why are they being resistant to what you are talking about, rather than just hammering the same point over again? And here's an interesting one: ask them what they need. So this is an issue for men, young and old, and for all those people that interact with men, young and old. It was a great conversation, and interestingly, in the same week, I have started to connect with an interesting group called the Fathering Project, which would be looking at men as they are about to enter, or as they have already entered, or perhaps have left, fatherhood. You know, the fatherhood is a great challenge, and this is an opportunity for us to engage and be present with our children from a very early stage. And so I'm looking forward to exploring the Fathering Project as well. So I hope you find this week's episode as stimulating and as enjoyable as I did. We practiced some techniques with Matt. Matt and I both checked in with each other. If you're wondering what that means, have a listen. It was a great experience for me. So I hope this finds you well. Until next time, this is Dr. Ron Ehrlich. Be well. This podcast provides general information and discussion about medicine, health, and related subjects. The content is not intended and should not be construed as medical advice or as a substitute for care by a qualified medical practitioner. If you or any other person has a medical concern, he or she should consult with an appropriately qualified medical practitioner. Guests who speak in this podcast express their own opinions, experiences, and conclusions.